Man, offer yourself grace. Be gentle with yourself. Have some self-compassion and stand boldly in your truth. Because at the end of the day, the world is already out here beating us up. And when I say the world, I mean everything in it, not just people. From the climate changes and everything, everybody's already beating you up. Why do you got to be against you? Why you got to beat you up? Love yourself. Self-love is probably the hardest love we ever have to, from what I'm learning, self-love is one of the hardest things to accomplish. And so I think once you love yourself, you're going to be able to definitely boldly walk in your truth and own your shit.
The top 3 responses that I get when I ask, why do you want to leave corporate America, are that you want financial freedom, you want to own your own time, and you want to build a legacy for this generation and generations to come. Now, this is not a solo job. In order to transition from your 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship, it's going to take community and it's going to take resources. And I've created the community of pioneers who are going to wrap around you and help you make that transition successfully. So if you're interested in leaving your job, go ahead and click that information below. Let's get into the community and let's transition from your 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship successfully. Now let's get back to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Work and Play podcast. I'm your host, Ariel, and I have the wonderful Monique Overstreet here to join me, CEO of Mo Knowledge. How are you, sis?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm just blessed to be here. Today's a beautiful day. I'm ready.
Yes, thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for asking me. I feel honored.
Yes. Well, your story is super interesting, and we already been connecting off camera, so I already, you guys are going to get a taste of what I've already got to witness and experience. So with that being said, would you like to tell us what it is that you do and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am full-time a mental health therapist. I focus on relational trauma. I'm trauma informed. I work with all ages, well, not all ages, 16 and up, men or women, to work through any relational trauma that they've been through, whether it's divorce, sexual assault, your parental conflicts, any kind of friendships that you came out of that you didn't, you kind of lose yourself sometimes. And so I focus on that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that expertise. So when it comes to mental health professionals, there's an array of ways that we can help clients through their journey. But what made you choose the trauma-informed lens?
Honestly, I started working for a organization that worked with women that were coming out of sex trafficking and exploitation. And they started working with their staff on seeing things from a trauma-informed lens. So when we work with the young ladies in the program, we would be able to work with them knowing that they're coming from a background of trauma and be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Possibly gentle with them and more aware that when we're talking to them, that we're dealing with someone who is probably functioning out of a trauma brain.
Yes, that's literally, I love the work of trauma informed because sometimes we label people oh, she's mad, she's angry, she's this, that, and other. And when you see people without that lens of trauma, being trauma informed, I can imagine everybody just needs to be trauma informed.
Listen, if people were trauma informed, I feel there would be so much more grace given. There would be so much more grace given to people and how they function. There would be much more understanding and a little bit more of less judgment and more assistance. Yeah. Cause it's we've had girls come in that didn't know how to clean. They're almost grown and most of them were over the age of 18. And you don't know how to use cleaning products properly. Somebody could come in and say, how you don't know how to clean? No. If that's not her background, that's the way she was raised, then that's just how it is. We have to be more aware that not everybody comes from the same background. I talk about changing subjects, not really changing subjects, but I like to focus on, I try to get this saying out there called reciprocal acceptance. I love it. When you think about it, it's just do unto others as you want done unto you, but accept others as you would like to be accepted. Yes. Because we judge so harshly and we treat people differently if they're not acting the way we expect them to act. And that's not okay because you want to be accepted if you make a mistake or anything. So reciprocal acceptance is what I like to focus on.
I love that. So the latest book that I read was The Four Agreements. And one of the things that it says, do not assume. Like, that's one of the agreements. And I realized even myself, as empathetic as I can be, as trauma-informed as I can be, I can assume that other people see my perspective. So even as we talk about it, I'm like, even us as therapists can look at people in the world and realize everybody doesn't come from the same perspective. So that reciprocal acceptance, always like having this awareness that we are people, flawed individuals, and that other people also have whatever their lens is.
Yes.
That's powerful.
And accepting people. Like, people are literally killing themselves because they don't feel accepted. And it's probably the simplest thing that's different about them. Yeah. And it's so unfortunate.
That's a consciousness thing, because as people don't feel accepted, we're not accepting ourselves.
That is.
So this interview is off to a great start. So you have, I'm assuming. Oh, you know what? I'm not assuming nothing.
Don't assume.
Not at all, right? Have you always been this connected, this deep, or connected into like helping and healing people?
I've always been what everyone else would say too much, because I would look deeper. That's how I came up with Mo Knowledge, because when I found that when I talk, people actually listen, and I was like, it's kind of scary because it's like sometimes you're just running your mouth and people are really intrigued and you're like, oh, I did say something pretty knowledgeable there. And so I came up with Mo Knowledge because so many people definitely like what I had to say, or they would give them a new perspective to think on things and see things. So that's how Mo Knowledge even came about. My name is Monique, and I was like Mo because people call me Mo, and I was like Mo Knowledge.
Okay, so you've been tapped in for quite a long time. So were you I guess, and you said you're what people call like too much. So tell me a little bit about like your upbringing. Were you the young person who's always tapped into your friends and family's problems?
So the thing is, I'm an only child. Oh, I was raised an only child. I'm not an only child. I was raised as an only child. I was my mom's only born child. And so, when you're an only child, you're tapped in because you ain't got nothing else to do unless you're reading a book or you in your room playing with your dogs having a tea party and or whatever you're doing. I'm usually with my mom. She usually got me somewhere and I'm sitting there like this. But then it's like get out of grown folks' mouth. So you don't pay I stopped paying attention to what they were saying, and I started paying attention to how they were functioning and just noticing when people would get upset and not say what they were really feeling, or how they would get upset and they would act out in different ways, but they didn't even know that they're upset about something that was said. So I think that is where I initially became tapped in or tuned in. Like my cousins, they would do all kinds of crazy things. And I'd be like, y'all, we really shouldn't do this because we're trying to do, I always had the bigger picture in mind. And they would say, you a goody two shoe. You a goody two shoe. You did it. But when I went to college and then came back, they were like, you cuss?
Like, who is she?
Right. I was like, yes, I do. What are y'all talking about? So I'm a whole person. And like, I have a part of Mo Knowledge is also saying it takes a village to be human. That's a part of that acceptance piece. And it's like, yes, I cuss. I'm a human. Like I'm a person. And so me just being tuned in that way, like human behavior has always intrigued me.
Talk a little bit more about it takes a village to be human. How did you develop that philosophy?
Ooh-wee. Yeah.
Yes, this is about to be good. I already know.
A couple years ago, I went through probably one of the hardest journeys I've ever had to go through in life. I was coming out of a relationship that I had experienced one incident of dating violence. And then I also got laid off from a job. And then I also was leaving my apartment and had to find another home and ended up almost homeless. Thank God to my friend who let me stay with her. But I could have been on the streets because I didn't have anywhere to go. So it was like during that time, of so much. That was trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma, back to back to back, all in one sitting. And I mean, I literally found myself in a dark room surrounded with all my boxes that I was supposed to be moving with, drinking a bottle of wine a day and not knowing where the next anything was coming from. I slowly started building myself back up. And then comes 2017, where I'm in this crazy internship. My father passes away. My car breaks down as I'm trying to go and take care of him and see him during the time that he's sick. And during those years, I'm Christian, by the way, God just started to form people around me. I would not have made it through that time. It was like a 2-year span, 3-year span without the village of people that were around me. And I learned then, because I was so independent before, I was the one taking care of people. No one had to take care of me. And so in that moment, I had to become humble. I had to learn grace. I had to learn self-compassion. I had to become almost, in my mind, infantile and allow people to take care of me. But the village stepped up. They stepped up and showed out. And that's where I was like, it takes a village to be human, man. Because if I didn't have those people, my village, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. It's like from all angles you were experiencing trauma, and the people who filled your village helped you with different resources. I can only imagine somebody helping you get fed, someone helping you get shelter, someone helping you emotionally.
Financially. I mean, exactly. One part of my village, I was with a church, in a small group for a church. They got money up to help me get a bus ticket to go see my daddy. I'm getting emotional to think about it, because I'm like, I wouldn't have made it without these people. So it takes a village, man, to be out here. This world is not easy. And it's not even the world, it's just the people and the things that are within this world that it takes to maintain and live. Yes. And you have to make sure that you're living and you're not just alive. Because I was just alive at that time, day to day, minute to minute. And I started telling myself, you just got to take it second by second. You know, they'd be like, take it day by day or step by step. No, I had to take it second by second.
When it comes to what you do as a professional, much of being a helping professional is like being able to understand people's situation. Man. And so one of the things that I'm like hearing is the passion of you understanding firsthand what it takes in order to be not only survive, but to thrive. Because I hear the pulse of the village was keeping you alive. It was keeping you on your feet. But then you got to a place where you were able to thrive. So like, what did that transition of like surviving to like maybe starting to feel a little bit of abundance and feeling a mindset shift feel like for you?
So I would say when I started getting me back, I started going to therapy. I found a therapist, and I started doing things that I like, because I started recreating myself. Because I was like, I tried to throw myself back out there in the dating world too. Because I took a couple years off and became celibate and just chilled. Because it was like, I don't need nothing up in here right now. Right. Like in my face, in my aura, in nothing. So I went ahead and I started going on dating sites, and the question would come up is like, what do you like to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Cause I was in school most of the time. So I didn't really go anywhere or do anything. I was focused at that time. Excuse me. And when you're dealing out a trauma brain, you are in a fog. You just going with the flow of everything. You don't even know what the flow is. You're just going. So, excuse me. When I started realizing that I didn't have an answer to that question, I was like, oh no, we got to figure this out. Cause I know I like to have fun. So I need to figure that out. What is it? And just started redoing me, like going to concerts, cause I like live music, going to any kind of artsy things and networking with people and just talking. That was something that I like to do. And so get involved with church. I was really involved with church at the time, and just really digging my heels in and building my relationship with God. So that's when I started feeling that abundance again, is because I felt like I was really identifying with something that made me feel like I mattered as well, and that I had a reason to be.
Yes. What I love is how you said recreating me. It's like, the way I envision it is like at ground zero, you had everything you needed from like the village perspective. And I think that inkling was like, oh, it takes a village to raise a child or raise a human. Started to come to be. And then I can almost envision like Legos of like additional like people and groups of people, and even your relationship with God that just enhanced the community that you had a new foundation of.
Yep. It definitely, my mom was my number one stick beside me. I'm gonna stick beside her because that's mine. That was my mama. She had to be like that. And my best friends, like all my close friends, they like, I mean, just so many people came in with their building blocks, you know?
Yeah.
The grace that they showed me, the understanding that was given, the love, all of it was needed in those moments. And because I was going through the time of like, I'm still in a phase of learning to love myself, because you don't come out of that easily. And trying to recreate yourself is also building things that you love about yourself and identifying what those are. Yeah. So yeah, those building blocks were there.
I can see it. I'm envisioning it. So you mentioned you were in school during this time. So what did you go to school to study?
I went to school my schooling journey was crazy. Like undergrad, I don't even want to talk about undergrad.
Well, I believe undergrad has its purpose because you made it. So whatever it was that you learned, you were supposed to take it into your grad degree.
So undergrad, I went to school in Minnesota. I did not want to go to school in Minnesota. I wanted to actually come down here. I had a full ride to the University of Minnesota. They had this initiative up there at the time. I think it was called Multi-Excellence Program, MEP. And you had to maintain a certain GPA and certain behaviors and all that, and go to these meetings in order to you would get a full ride to any school in Minnesota. So I did that. Well, lo and behold, I get to undergrad and wild out.
Okay. I was free.
Had to leave the U of M and transfer to a different college, Metropolitan State University, and I got my degree in human services there. Okay. And finished it out. Now,
how did you turn up in Minnesota? I could not stand the winters.
You don't ever get used to it. I was about to lie. So you don't ever get used to them winters. But I mean, when you live there, you adjust to your environment. So we out there with our coats and our heels, and we go in the club, you get a couple of whatevers and you good. Yeah. By the time you out there having fun, and you going to fraternity and sorority parties, and you don't feel, you just out here.
You warmed up.
You ain't thinking about nothing. You just having fun with your friends. And we threw the parties and everything. Yeah.
I got you. I can understand. So we went to Atlanta Metro, and then got your human services.
Well, Metropolitan, that's in Minnesota too. Oh. I didn't come down here until after I got my degree.
I'm glad make that clarification, because my mind went straight to Atlanta Metropolitan.
It was Metropolitan State University. And I got my 4-year up there. And then I came here because I had a friend that was living here, and he wasn't really liking his situation, and I was like, well, I'll move. I'll come down there with you. And because I didn't have no kids. I just got a degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. Sure, I'll move. So moved down here to Atlanta and decided, okay, so what we're going to do with our life down here. And right before I left Minnesota, I was working for this program, Volunteers of America. They had a EBD program, which is emotional behavior disorders. This is like anyone who's dealing with a personality disorder, just all kinds of things. But I was working with them, and I was on their clinical team as just a staff, direct care staff. I just had to report anything that I've been noticing with the residents. And I noticed that once we had the clinical team meeting, there was a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychologist that would come in and talk to us about what's going on in their therapy sessions and their family therapy sessions. And I was like, I like this. Like, you're helping us understand the big picture. I like that. Like, so that helps me to understand this child a little more of like what they're going through. Yeah. And so when they would come to our meetings and then take what we say back to the parents and bring it into their family sessions to help the families understand their child too, I was like, man, I like this. So I was like, I'm gonna go to school and be a therapist.
Wonderful. So in that moment, you got to see, one, the impact on the child, but then you also got to see the impact on the family and how that ultimately changes, dare I say, like generational behaviors, familial behaviors.
Yes. Oh my God. When I tell people, when I be like, share, comment, when you share me or sharing any other therapist, you are sharing generational, like this, you never know who's going to pick up on it. Who I might resonate with, who you might resonate with, and they're like, oh, I need to make a session with her. And it becomes a life changer for a whole generation.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, I love this position of like helping people to understand themselves and then also helping others to understand them if I can.
Yeah. So I know I'm making all these assumptions.
No, you're fine.
But you, of course, bring your personal experience and your passion for living and your passion for life through experience to your practice. But so you decided at that point, I want to be a therapist. What was your favorite modality to like learn on it, or what modality informs your practice today?
Really, my favorite was learning about trauma. I wouldn't say, well, I will say, let me see. How do I want to answer this? When you say modality, give me a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like, so when you say your philosophy that it takes a village to raise a human, I think person and environment, because you have to shape the environment in order for us to, or part of your environment shapes who you are. But then there's, strengths-based, in which we're talking about what can you do as an individual to get out of your ish, right? And so thinking about how we approach trauma and your philosophy being so environmental, I'm assuming, but I asked you a question without the assumption. So I was just wondering, like, when you meet a client, when you decided I want to be a therapist, what skill sets did you hone in on that help you do what you do from like a education or like a vocation perspective? Because I already know your lived experience informs what you do.
Okay, so you said strength-based. That program that I originally talked about that I worked at for sexually trafficked women, we did a lot of strength-based training with them. And I definitely function from that model because, man, listen, it took me a while to get into strength-based because, you raised where it's like, what you robbing somebody for? Like, you're going to ask questions about the bad behavior. Well, they taught us like, if a kid is sneaking out at night to go get something or get a need met, they're being resourceful.
Ooh, that's strong.
And I was like, but she's sneaking out. She's being resourceful. And when you're in the streets and you're coming from trauma and you're learning how to get your needs met, you be resourceful. So I had to understand it from that. So when I talk to my clients, I definitely focus on them also because of society, they have a lot of assumptions and also self-hate, self-doubt, all that type of conversation, like a negative narrative in their head about their own behaviors. And I try to help them flip why you're doing this. Why? What got you here? So I definitely work with cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma-focused cognitive CBT for short. I'm not really solution focused. I am solution focused, but I'm not. Solution focused is like a quick turnaround, and that's not me. I also like to go back into your childhood and let's look at that inner child.
Yes.
Like what's going on there, because and you would be amazed. I recently realized that I also have clients separate themselves from that inner child and talk about it as a third person. so that you can see and have grace on that child for what they were going through. What did you need in that moment as a child that you're needing now as an adult?
Yes. One of the things that, so I'm so glad you framed it that way, because it's okay to not be, well, not that you're saying it wasn't, but to not be solution focused, because when I'm in my coaching sessions, I often say, I'm not here to do the why, because I understand that there are whys, and we show up in the workplace and we downplay our strengths, and we say that someone else did a project where we probably did 90% of it and they did 10%. And there are behaviors that are, come from my childhood that I don't necessarily deal with. I'm like, okay, so how do we get you to your solution in the quickest route possible? However, I highly suggest them working with someone like you to start to unravel those whys. So that gets me to, like, when you get a client who is, like, trying to level up in their career, for example, and they have all of these, like, wound up childhood behaviors. You said that you have them talk to their child and differentiate or delineate that child from who they are today. What's some of the first things that you do to get clients to open up to you and to trust you in that way?
I mean, I give them the floor and establish that safety. Like, you safe here. This your space. This ain't about me. It's about you. And I want you to get what you can out of here. But I definitely want you to understand that I am your supporter. I'm not against you. I'm here to work with you through this. And I want you to be, because we beat ourselves up. And I'm like, be gentle with yourself. So I feel like, and I also allow them to know some of my story. Like, so they know that I'm not perfect. I'm not the expert. I might be an expert in my realm, but I'm not the expert. Nobody's an expert on life. Yeah. So I'm just here to try and help you walk through this journey in the best way possible so that you can meet your highest potential. So I think by me establishing that, listen, I'm not perfect, I think that helps. Because I think when people go to therapy, they're like, oh, a therapist, what kind of mind tricks are you about to do? And it's like, no. Not at all. I wish I could do some mind tricks, but no.
Unfortunately, we can't make you do what you do.
Right. Because you're going to come back to me next week and tell me you didn't do my homework.
Right. And if I had control of you would have done it. I feel that. Okay, girl. I love it. I feel like I could be on your couch and really, like, unravel some things for myself. But so in your, back to your journey, your career journey, you decide, okay, I want to be a therapist. What was the next step that you took to start to develop your specialization in your field?
So I guess when I decided I'm going to go to school, I need to find a school that offered a degree in counseling, and learning the background to counseling and what I needed to do to become a therapist. I started really just kind of navigating this field. People out there don't know, but we know in this world, social worker and therapists, LPCs and LCSWs, it's a whole thing. And and
what do you mean when you say
a whole thing? I'm gonna let the people know. So it's almost, I don't want to say it's a battle, but it's almost like we do the same things. Yet it's like LCSW would be like, we do it better than you, and then LPC is like, no, we can do it better than you, and it's like, we do the same thing. We do the
same thing. That is a whole thing.
It's almost like a sorority. Like, not a real battle, but like, I'm better,
when in reality we're a team.
And so with the, when I was told people I was going to be I wanted to be an LPC, they were like, why don't you want to be an LCSW? You can get more jobs. And I was like, because I want to focus here. I don't want to work in these other spaces. This is where I want to do. Right. So, and I wanted to be a motivational speaker as well. So that one's kind of on the back burner, but
it's coming,
so that's where I wanted to focus at. And so I started learning more about LPC work and getting to know other people in this field. And, a lot of people that I was working with at that organization were also in school to be therapists. Okay. So we all kind of created our own little clique here. And so I don't know. I mean, after that step, it just became taking the steps to become a therapist. And then 2019, I finally received my APC, which is the Associate Professional Counselor. Okay. And and a friend who I love dearly took an opportunity, took a chance on me, I should say, someone who's part of my village, and allowed me to work in her private practice. Cause it's not easy out here for associates. Like there are people coming out of school, and I try to advocate for this, but people are coming out of school making $12 an hour, and you're a whole master's level student or a graduate. Right. And it really irritates me that this role is taken so cavalier, because it's like, we literally stop people from blowing up your buildings. Absolutely. We literally stop people from, like if some people weren't coming to us, they probably would be, I don't know. And I just feel like the role of a social worker or a therapist is just not respected enough in this world, because the work that we got to go through as a therapist, like right now as an associate, I have to do 3 years under someone else's license, and I have to pay to be to meet with them every month.
In order to get accredited, right?
To get accredited. And I'm paying for that. Right. While on top of paying all my bills and possibly making $12 an hour. How does that make sense?
Hey guys, it's Ariel from the Work and Play podcast. If you're getting any value from this channel, and I mean anything from the tutorials to the podcast to the random videos that you see on this channel, then I just ask that you do one thing. Please subscribe. Subscribe and share this to anyone that you think this resonates with, and drop a comment below so I know what other things that you want to see next. Now let's get back to the episode. I think the system, both social workers and therapists, I think the system, like you said, doesn't necessarily value our work. But at the same time, my philosophy is actually, I'm more of a strengths-based person from a perspective of you have to demand your price. And so many times we think the system or the institution of such corporations or social work, or we allow, it's kind of like a relationship. I believe you take what you allow. People do what you allow them to do. And because we are on the cusp of this like entrepreneurial bubble, I feel like more and more therapists can, one, demand their price. And then two, we can do the work that we do and be sane and be well paid enough to save people from one, blowing up the building, and then help these executives actually do their job as well. So in that regard, and I guess in that vein, what type of clients do you like to work with? What's their story, and like how do you like to help them?
I want to step back and then I'll come to that. Okay. So in relating to what you had said about becoming an entrepreneur, that's why I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I do want to work for myself because people are not being paid, but I'm speaking more from a standpoint from people who do want to have the heart to want to work for community-based programs and things like that. Pay these people. Pay those people what they're owed. Worth. That too. So that's on that. But as far as my clients, I love my clients, man. They're so dope. My clients are so dope. Like every time I have sessions with them, I'm like, and I be telling them in the office, I'm like, man, you're dope. Like you are doing such great work. And these are people that are coming to me about, I mean, it could range from divorce, just like I said, relational trauma, mother-daughter conflict, sexual assault, a lot of grief. A lot of things stem from grief, and people don't realize that. I didn't even realize until I started this work how much grief is entangled in all of this. I
didn't even know that there were different types of grief. Like I just thought nobody died in my life. Why would I be grieving? So that's really cool work that you do there.
Yeah, grief. Like I didn't know about subconscious grief. Like I remember, and it was from personal experience. I was waking up and I was feeling sad. And I'm like, why am I sad? Like everything is good. Why am I sad? Look at the date. I realized it's the day my grandfather passed away. And I didn't realize it till later in the day, but everybody kept talking to me during the day, like, you okay? And I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on. I talked to my mom. I'm like, Mom, is today the day that Papa died? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh. Like my spirit was just so sad. Yeah. And it was subconscious. I didn't know. wasn't thinking about it. So subconscious grief is a thing on those days that things aren't feeling right. Think about that time of the year.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So when you think about like your entrepreneurial journey, and I know like the targeted issues can be a range, right? But as an entrepreneur, have you started to think about what socioeconomic bucket you work with? And if you're more familiar with people who are in a lower socioeconomic bucket or versus people, or are your clients both high and low socioeconomic buckets?
So kind of both, because I know what it's like not to have anything. So I do offer a slot for pro bono, but it will be also, I feel like people need to pay for what they value also. So like, if you want to gift something to me as I work with you, that's fine. If you don't have anything to give, I'll work with you. Now, again, that's only one slot that I have. I have 4 slots for a sliding scale fee, where if you can't afford my full amount, I got 4 slots that I can, if they're not filled, I can take you in and help you out that way. But on the other end of it, I'm more of a middle class or upper middle class. That's more of the range that I work with.
Thank you for breaking that down. Because so especially in the social worker field, everybody feels like everybody should be on a sliding scale.
Yeah,
and
no.
It's like no. The way that you just broke it down, where 1 pro bono, 4 sliding scale, and the rest of my clientele would have to pay at the full price. That is, I would say, the most balanced approach that I've heard so far.
Well, I mean, because I didn't want to just jump in and be like, I charge this amount, I can't work with you because you can't pay it. Because my therapist worked with me. I'm like, I ain't got a job. What can I do? And they work. If he didn't work with me, by the way, my therapist is a white male, and love him to death. We've been working together forever.
Can we get into that?
Sure.
So when it comes to choosing a therapist, many times people choose they want to only be with a black woman if they're a black woman, or a black male if they're a black male, or if they have to compromise the opposite sex but within the same race. So can you talk a little bit more about the choice of a therapist?
Well, the funny thing is, my friends, the person who I work under right now, she actually referred me to him. She went to school with him, and she's like, he'd be great. So this was after everything had happened, right after I had lost my job, went through the dating violence and all that stuff. And I walked into his office and I dumped it, and I said, now what? I just spilled it. And he was like, okay. And he hit me with well, I'm a white male. How do you feel about working with me? And we tackled it right on. Immediately. And ever since then, I was like, I like you. I like you.
I like him too. I like him too.
And he calls me on my stuff. He does not play any games. And I like it.
Would you say, so there's 2 ways that I'm thinking about this. As the client in search of a therapist, and I'm also thinking about it from a white male perspective who is a therapist. I'll ask you 2 questions, but one of them I'm going to do one at a time.
Okay.
So the first one is, do you recommend the strategy of dumping? So for people who want to know who's a good fit, do you recommend, okay, just dump on your first session and see how they handle it? Or do you typically recommend people ask certain questions to figure out if the therapist is a good fit for them?
I say it depends on the individual person. What's your personality and what can you handle? Can you handle constantly bringing that up? Because I was desperate and I needed somebody. And so me dumping on him, I did want to see how he handled it. And I think, like I said, it depends on the individual. If you can go and tell your story to multiple people and be okay with that, because you can be re-traumatizing yourself. So you have to be careful. But I do feel that you should kind of seek your therapist out, because that's a person that's getting in your business. That's going to be my therapist is that dude. He's the one that knows everything that other people don't know. So this is the person that you're going to be open and spilling your guts to. So you definitely want to be able to feel like you trust them, you relate to them. You don't, because sometimes I know people go to therapy, they feel judged. Yeah. They feel unheard. they feel like somebody's trying to change them or trying to be their best friend, or, you're doing too much. That's why you got to kind of fill them out.
That's a good point. I think if a person is trying to evaluate how much to share in that first session, the one thing that you said was like, not the one thing, but one of the things that you said was like, it depends on your personality. I think also gauging your situation. Like if this is your only free session and you got to capitalize on it, it sounds like if you're not dumping it, at least give them like 50% of the
Give
problem.
them the gut punch, at least. Gut punch it.
So they can make it effective. And then the second part, the last part, which is like being aware of not re-traumatizing yourself, knowing how much of your story needs to be shared in order for someone to help you. Sounds like a level of self-awareness that you would just have to kind of work your way through as you find the right fit. But then being aware that people, you might feel judged, so looking out for someone if they understand you, that kind of thing. That's a really great analysis. And I think anyone could take something from that and figure out whether they should be dumping on the first session and then wait for the information on the back end, or slowly feed somebody a part of their story.
A little bit at a time. It just depends. It really does depends. Because, I've had clients come in and they're not as open, but I have certain questions that I'm going to ask to get to make sure some serious, like I'm always going to ask on my first session, are you having suicidal thoughts? Have you ever had suicidal thoughts? Do you self-harm? Finding out things like that so I can know how deep we are in here with that.
That goes to my second question, which I am so loving the fact that you are in the same wavelength, because my second question was for white therapists, right? I know therapists in general should be asking the questions, right? Like you said, the question that you need to know to set the foundation. But for a white therapist who wants to help more in the community, it sounds like they should take more of an approach that your therapist did, which is like, well, how do you feel about me being a white therapist? But I'm wondering if you have like any learning experience wisdom or technical wisdom that you would have for a white therapist who's like, I don't know how to help. I want to be more helpful to the Black community. Should I be asking everybody, like, how do you feel about it? Like, is that how I need to be going about every single, because people have been hearing this interview like, oh, well, that needs to be my first question.
Gosh. I laugh because during everything that went down with the pandemic and so many different white people wanting to know how to help, it was just so much.
Yes.
Like, why is that not intuitive? Like, I don't want to teach you that.
I know.
But we kind of do.
We kind of do.
That's why I laugh so hard. So I apologize.
Take it and run with it and be like, okay, well, that'll be my number one question.
Right. So, oh my gosh.
That's a fact.
Okay. So even during the pandemic though, my therapist, he would ask me like, how do you feel about what's going on? Like he was make sure that he was on top of it. And I like that. He wasn't giving me the white sympathy, if that makes sense. It wasn't the, oh no, I'm so sorry. It was more of like, so how do you feel? What's going on? Like he wanted to know, genuinely know what's going on. And it's like, be human. Don't be overly like, ugh. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Overly sympathetic, empathetic. I don't know, but just be, I don't know how to, I can't do that. I can't do it.
One of the words that I'm thinking is maybe don't be prescriptive, because my mindset went, someone's going to take that and literally put that on a form. Like, how do you feel about working with a white person? And I feel like that's prescriptive. But then maybe they would be I think overly sympathetic in any regard. Race, like out of
anything.
Picture, overly sympathetic doesn't allow your client to work through their situation. I think that's where you're going with it. So
yes, and it's off-putting.
Yeah. Also, and I hate to bring it. No, even I don't hate to bring it. I love you, Yana. Fix my life. But when she talks about like, look, I know.
Okay.
This is good.
I'm smile through it.
Because what she says, when a mother is crying, so when a child is hurting, mother cries in front of him because the child is trying to share their whatever, and the mother starts to cry. it shuts the child down, and it could be an adult person, but from expressing themselves. So, like you said, it does not receive well if you're sitting in front of your therapist and they hurting more than you have the ability to show up and hurt.
I mean, I think that's like some of the things they teach us in school. Like, it's not about you. Don't be oversharing. Monitor you get your own therapist so you're not projecting.
Yeah, get your own therapist.
So you're not projecting. Like you just working in the organization. I'll go back to that again. It was very important for us to make sure that, because when people are going through trauma, it's easier to focus on everybody else but themselves. And so they're looking for that out. Like, as soon as you give them, like, you having a conversation and you're like, man, my car broke down. Your car broke down? What are you going to do about that? Like, if it takes the attention off of them, it takes the work that needs to be done here and puts it over here so they can feel like they're doing you a favor. So it's more so like, we're here to focus on you.
That's good. That's real good. Oh, that's real good. I think about so many successful people who might be hurting inside and want to focus on everybody else around them.
I was one of the people. I mean, you learn because you like trying to help, like somebody. We'll just leave it at that.
Right. You speak from experience and you speak from education. So I think that's clear. So now that we're in 2021, you're helping clients, and I love the pay schedule. You're handling entrepreneurship like I want to say a pro, but we are all in our own entrepreneurial journey. Everything's a lesson.
I'm a baby out here on Bambi legs. I'm on Bambi legs out here. Hoping not to fall. Skating across the ice. We winging this thing.
So, what are some of the things that you have that you're working on now that you like to bring to your clients and kind of help them through their situations now that we're in 2021?
Oh my gosh. So, I've purchased so many books. Well, 3 mainly that I'm reading for myself and for my clients. There is one called CBT for Perfectionism, because I deal with perfectionism so heavily. And then also I have one about mother-daughter relationships. I'm reading that book because I have a lot of mother-daughter issues happening, a lot of transference from that. And the other one is the Inner Child Workbook. And that is like dealing with the stuff in your childhood and like how it's showing up now in your current life. So it's a lot. Like, as I'm working with clients, it's like I bought these books for like maybe one particular client, but I'm like, you need it, I need it, we need it. So it's been exciting on that part of the journey. I will be, also in 2021, I'm putting together an anxiety box. It will be based off the 5 senses, and I should have that ready to go probably in the next month or so for sale. So nice. I'm excited about that, to see how it works for people, like how it helps with anxiety and things like that. I have a program called You're a Jewel, where I'm talking about recreating who you want to be, and when you're coming out of a traumatic relationship. So, I mean, I just want to offer my clients the opportunity to be there, stand boldly in their truth, build their self-confidence, and just be dope, because they are.
Yes.
They're just so dope.
By the time this episode launches, I know we're going to have this anxiety box as well as your program available. So we can definitely put a link in the description so you guys can copy it. We will definitely help you help yourselves and get these things to help yourself get yourself together. I'm curious, as you help other people boss up, what's your next level and what's your boss up going to look like?
Right now, it's a lot of being in tune with me right now. So it's me against me right now. And so my next level of boss up, honestly, I would like it to be moving to that next tax bracket, and then also moving to that next level of the human me, like my perspective on things, how I handle things, a good control over emotions, and just human. Being a better human is what my level of boss up next. So for me.
Love it. Love it. Yes. I when it comes to our creativity, our love lives, our financial life, just as a holistic human. Boss up.
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the couch. You have been literally a light to me. And I think I'm going to take this energy throughout the rest of the day.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
One of the things that I like to do on the show, you're welcome, by the way. Thank you. One of the things I like to do on the podcast is reach back. Because along our journey, we're gung-ho and shooting for the stars here. But we never want to forget those who are on their way in their own situations, and they need to get a word of courage or a word of wisdom to make their next step and move forward. So if you could reach back or think of someone or even the younger you who you'd like to share a word with to help encourage them to move forward or even explore other sides of themselves, because that courage that you took, for the insight that you took from, you're like, oh, they're making impact over here, I want to do this for myself. And then being able to put yourself in an environment where you can learn to be a therapist, that's courageous. And so if you can think about, someone along your journey who's just watching you thrive or hasn't even started to realize their full potential, what would you like to tell them?
I think I would tell them what I kind of tell most people anyways, like, man, offer yourself grace, be gentle with yourself, have some self-compassion, and stand boldly in your truth. Because at the end of the day, the world is already out here beating us up. And when I say the world, I mean everything in it, not just people. From the climate changes and everything, everybody's already beating you up. Why do you got to be against you? Why you got to beat you up? Love yourself. Self-love is probably the hardest love we ever have to. From what I'm learning, self-love is one of the hardest things to accomplish. And so I think once you love yourself, you're going to be able to definitely boldly walk in your truth and own your shit.
There you have it. That's amazing. So if you guys have tapped into anything that Miss Mo Knowledge has said today, I encourage you to reach out. And if there is someone who's listening to your story, they connect with you or they want to work with you, how can they do that?
They can go on my website, www.moknowledge.com. It's spelled M-O knowledge.com. And you can sign up for a 15-minute consultation with me so we can see if we're a good fit.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. Until next time, peace out. You guys go have a great day.